The MBA and career outcomes, it's like strawberries and cream. Those two go together. I know it's a subject that goes straight to the heart of why many people pursue an MBA in the first place. And in the next 45, 50 minutes, we're going to be exploring the career questions I think any serious MBA candidate should be asking. Where are graduates heading? By role, by industry, by geography, how are those things shifting? What are employer expectations? And of course, all of you Centre Court viewers know just what I think about the career management teams at business schools. I see them as this secret sauce, this magic box, and they will be meeting you even before you show up at campus, joining you through that entire MBA journey, and then in the years that follow. So if you care about ROI and employability and long-term trajectories for your personal and professional development, you're in the right place. And we have two industry experts from two of the world's leading business schools to share their perspectives and what they're seeing. From the London Business School, Anne Alaoui, she's the head of both MBA and the Masters in Finance careers. And from Cambridge Judge Business School, Sadia Cuthbert, she's the head of careers. So, Sadia, Anne, thank you for joining us at Centre Court. Perhaps, Anne, it may feel like only yesterday that you joined London Business School, and I'm not going to say anything different, but tell us a little bit about the school, of course, and then your role working with all of
Sure.
these students coming through your doors.
Let me start with the school to set the context. And yes, strawberries and cream. We are in the heart of London. So Wimbledon comes to mind. I'm looking at my cup of tea in my Wimbledon mug. So obviously we're based in the heart of London, but global impact is what we have. And for me, that shines. We have so many different programs, but the MBA remains the flagship program quite clearly. It's a large program with about 500 students in the intake in a traditional 2-year model, alongside our new innovative 1-year MBA. That's not the only game on campus. We've also got our graduate masters with different programs. They generally have 1 or 2 years of experience. And then at the other end of the scale of experience levels, we've got our Sloans and our Embers. And then the Master in Finance, specialized in finance. So campus really reflects all of those groups, and the MBA is the heart piece of that. Myself, I started 8 years ago, and yes, it does all still feel new because there's always something new happening, in that time, having gone through the COVID period, then the advent of AI and LLMs, that has all had an impact on how we talk about careers. So I feel I'm always learning, which is one of my values. It also, when I come to an event like this, reminds me of when I started my own MBA program in the US, I dare say. And I'm really glad for every single person who's here, because you're doing what I didn't do. You're really doing your groundwork way before you start and hopefully before you apply. So thank you for being here.
Well, it's a great place to start, and to the extent with keeping track of so many students at different stages in their personal journey, you've had to expand across the road and a new building to fit everybody in. But we'll be talking about how you stay in touch with graduates that then pursue careers all over the world. Very similar, of course, Sadia at Cambridge Judge, welcoming talent from all over the world. So tell us a little about what makes Judge so special and your role.
Hello, nice to be here. Thank you very much for inviting us. My role, I'll talk about a bit later, but Judge Business School is really a department within the University of Cambridge. So we benefit not just by being a business school at the heart of Cambridge, which also has a fantastic ecosystem for entrepreneurship, but we're also really sitting really in the huge university, which stretches from many, many departments. And we have a collegiate system as well. So our students and what makes Cambridge special is that you have this mix of entrepreneurship. You've got a lot of leadership going on around you. You've got lots of different aspects coming together, and in the middle of a big university. And the collegiate system just makes things a little bit more familial, and gives you a little bit of a taste to think aloud, I would like to say as well. So no, it's a fantastic university, a great place. The business school, I've been at the business school for 15 years, and learned a lot, and things are changing all the time. And we work with many different programs. My specific role and my careers team's role is working first and foremost with the MBAs, the full-time MBAs. And again, like LBS, it's a flagship program for us as well. We have 230 MBAs. We are a one-year program, very different. And we have a Masters in Finance program, again, a flagship program of sorts as well for us, because it is a top program in rankings, and it is 100 students. So we work with those students. My team also works with the executive MBA and the other executive programs. But as highlighted, there are so many other programs going on at the business school. We have entrepreneurship.
Now, Sadia's just frozen, so we'll come back to her and she can describe to us those collegiate dinners, whether they all have Wimbledon mugs, and I'm not sure, but sitting next to astrophysicists and biologists. You talked about an ever-changing role, and perhaps, from one year to the next, the sort of roles, the industries that your MBA graduates most commonly enter. How has that evolved for you in the past few years?
Absolutely. That is really a breeding ground. And what we get students who are coming in who initially think that they're very, very clear about their pathway and where they want to be going. And then the whole experience of working within the collegiate system and also with other departments within university, they sort of become aspiring entrepreneurs, or they want to work with a startup. So there's a transition that happens within the MBA, certainly, that we see directly. And I think so many ideas are burgeoned through dinners and just ideas. The other thing is also, I think Anne would say the same, is that when you come to such a melting pot of MBAs, you realize that there are so many more opportunities than you had ever thought of. Isn't that right, Anne? That you have that as well, and students are suddenly just sort of seeing, okay, there's that exists, etc. And search funds is something that people are just waking up to, etc. So yeah, a lot happening, not just AI, I'd like to say.
Right. Well, we've brought the beast into the conversation, and we'll certainly be looking at the impact of AI. Transformational, Anne, is a word I hear a lot about the MBA, and transition. We were just about to start a discussion of how roles in industries coming up with these new plans from whatever you might have shared with David Simpson and the team in your admissions application. What are you seeing, and how has that evolved in recent years?
I would say it's more than a few recent years. It's really been a trend when you look at this. What hasn't changed is the graduate recruiters, the MBA recruiters are still going strong. So we still have the interest from our global recruiters, whether that's in consulting, finance, or technology. And there's also some consumer goods and healthcare mixed in. So that still stays, and that really is a core piece of MBA recruitment. But I think what's changed is, on the one hand, student aspirations have changed over time. And on the other hand, actually the roles and the companies. So much more interest in startups, scale-ups, generally other roles in tech. So growing demand in strategy, product management in tech, fintech, energy, and some of those newer ones that are emerging are climate and sustainability. And even though not many students go into that as a post-MBA career, to Sadia's point, they might be exploring while they're at LBS. So maybe they do a term time internship, maybe they do a project in one of those areas. So even though that might not show in the employment report immediately, if you're looking at the longer term trajectory, that's where students are building their skills and knowledge for their long-term progression. Right. An interesting one to throw in, for some reason in the last couple of years, we've had more students who are looking at sports, the business of sports. That's a small niche that seems to grow.
Yes, I know. We've sort of seen a similar kind of trend as well. And I threw in search funds yesterday. I was sort of being crowded around by students who wanted to know more about them and move into them. So there's a lot of things have changed. And I think when I certainly joined 15 years ago, so the kinds of recruitment activities we did was, you typically had a big tech come in and swoop up a whole load of students. And then they went, and off they went, and they did this for years. I think that's changed. Students are still wanted, but in a different way. And the MBAs in themselves offer so much to a client. So they bring thought, clear, critical thinking. And in this age of confusion, or in this age of constant learning, I think that's a real talent to have, that I think recruiters are still seeing.
Well, I can remember, Sadia, a previous centre court with an alum of the school who had done a company project with Cambridge United Football Club and then went on to a very successful career with BCG. We talk about employers and their expectations. Are they changing, or the sort of skill sets that they're looking for from your graduates?
I think there's a definite shift we've seen over the years, and the shift is one that we would describe as hiring for potential, is what it's been in the past, and now it's hiring for potential plus, or a phrase you might hear often is skills-based hiring. Now, when has it ever not been skills? But yes, the skills are much more concrete. So what are employers looking for? They're obviously looking for that MBA potential, that someone's bright, smart, can work with people from very diverse backgrounds, but they're also asking for some technical fluency, working with AI, interpreting AI. Being good with numbers, being good with people is still there. But I think that's where it's changed, that the experience students bring from before their MBA really matters. And I would say that's where a lot of our effort goes from the Career Centre team in working with students one-on-one in small groups, is really helping them hone those skills so that they can express the value that brings to a potential employer. Because in a competitive recruitment landscape, you need to just really make those skills absolutely clear. You can't leave it up to the employer to figure out how you're going to be a fit for them. So I think that's where really the shift has been from, yes, we're purely looking for that sort of academic and social potential, in terms of dealing with people, in terms of good academics. And now it's really very much also looking at what has the previous experience been before doing an MBA, and how does that translate into skills?
Well, Sadia, this idea of not just potential, but potential plus, the program itself is providing any number of skills, analytical skills, also the developing people skills, managing teams and others. So what is the layer that Career Management Services is adding on top to best prepare candidates for the sort of expectations that employers have?
I think what I would just say is, so they already come with 6-7 years work experience at the business school. They're all a global team. They're all very tech savvy as well. But what I feel is where we are very integral is to help them understand. Our classes are very international. We get very global classes to understand what is expected of them in another global region as well. What are the expectations from the clients? How is the interview process happen? What are the cover letters supposed to look like? And what is the communication style? I think that's really integral. Of course, we're doing the skills-based, help that we could give the students, the modeling sessions. Of course, there's a lot of AI around it, but I think critically, we're talking about leadership, how to show your leadership and what it means in this space that we are in. So yeah, we have a very strong role to play and a very big role to play. Plus, we're also the conduit with employers. We bring them in as well. The one thing I would like to say that MBAs are viewed and should increasingly be viewed as a bridge. They form the bridge between any kind of technological company. They translate problems between technology and commerciality. So really being able to explain that whole process to everybody and to even the students is quite critical for us.
Right, and building that bridge within an incredible support network. And I mean, we often read in the media that companies themselves are using AI to filter through candidates. They'll receive thousands of applications. Does having that network really help the candidates to break through and be on the radar screen of the employers they're targeting?
I think it's even more important now. Don't you agree, Anne? It's much more important
The
now.
answer is unequivocally yes.
Yes, completely.
Just submitting your application doesn't do it anymore. And I think any job seeker out there can attest to that. It has to go hand in hand with networking. And it isn't just networking for who do you know. Again, it's much more, can you actually show how you would network your way around a large organization? Can you build good people relationships? can you already show in your coffee chats that you're on the same wavelength, building connections and talking about solving problems in a business context? So yeah, absolutely. And I think at LBS, it's also very student-led. So yes, of course, we help from the Career Center and we help students distill those skills and talk about them and map their path. But a lot of it tends to be student-led as well. So we have a hugely active student association. Our MBAs are very, very much at the forefront of that. And some of those MBA student club leaders, they actually lead an organization of up to 40 volunteer students. So that's amazing leadership experience right there, where you can sort of experiment with your leadership style and what you're learning in your OB classes.
Right. Now, the bonds between students, but also the connection with alumni. You're meeting the incoming class, Sadia, before they even have their first class on discounted cash flow or whatever it might be. What is that journey of meeting candidates, initial sort of discussions that you might have together, and how that will evolve through the course of the program?
So we start our whole, of course, I'm sure Anne is as well involved in some of the admissions processes. So maybe we're on panels, etc., with students ourselves. But later on, when the admissions has happened, we start working with our students actually quite early. They have the pre-arrival site, the pre-arrival course, really, to help them understand their values and where they want to be going and their aspirations and goals. And we help them through that, and it's integral. That part is really integral to how they will then work with us in the future as well. So that takes place now, and nowadays, I mean, our term starts in September, but so we're working with our students from May onwards and having one-to-one conversations if they wish to, or directing them, etc. And then, of course, the deadlines are becoming earlier as well. So we sort of preparing them for that even before they've joined the business school, maybe in terms of case for some of the some instances as well. So we start really early, and of course we work very, very closely with them right till when they're alumni, and that's a different story altogether.
Right.
So
You must get to know them so well. Anne, is there, they've come in, maybe they worked for Teach for America and they tell you, well, I want to now transition to private equity. Is there sort of holding up a mirror and to actually challenge them on some of the ideas that they might have, or opening up their minds to other opportunities?
I think any good career coaching would do that. You always need to hold both the aspirational and the realistic part kind of in your hands at the same time. And I think that's what smart students need to do as well. So again, going back to the skills, you want to go into PE in your example, what do you actually need? And then what has Teach America taught you? That's going to be relevant to somebody working in PE. It's really as basic as that. But even more basic, I think we always start with the question why.
Mm.
If you can't articulate your why, well, that's a first thing to work on. And so I would almost say, yes, we start with the incoming class in June. On the 2-year MBA, we have a longer time frame. So it's a different timeline to a 1-year program. But I think all of that thinking of what we're talking about right now in this webinar starts really with the application process. It's not just a process to get in to business school. And to anyone listening, my most important piece of advice is treat it as a self-reflection exercise. Use those questions to really think about, what will this MBA program bring you? How do you want to engage with it? Rather than just looking through the lens of, well, what do I need to say in order to get in?
Right. Sadia, you'd mentioned that there is this dialogue between your colleagues in the admissions office and the career center that weighs in. That must be a very healthy dialogue to reflect on that clarity of vision. But again, always the sense of potential, maybe, that lies behind any given candidate.
absolutely. It's always about the potential. It's also, I'm not that heavily involved with the admissions side, but I know that the admissions team reflect very clearly on the essays, and it's that question of why are you applying? Why the MBA? What have you shown and how have you grown in the last so many years of your work and within the work? Of course, you will find, and I'm going to say this aloud and probably regret it, but there's a lot of people who apply who want to give back to the environment and who want to do social and all good things on earth. And actually, when push comes to shove, they don't want to go to ESG, etc., etc. So, but I think it's very important for us to see beneath what they're saying as well, because obviously students want to get in, so they will say things that they think we want to hear as well. A lot of our students also speak, all the MBA students also speak to alumni from our cohorts, etc., and they get feedback on whether this is a relevant course for them and what it means to them. So there are lots of bits. I think all our courses are quite, we're MBAs, we have to teach them kind of a similar syllabus, but however, they all have jewels within them. And people take what they like in the program and select them as a result.
Right. And if you don't mind, I'm going to borrow what have you shown and how have you grown? I love the poetry of that, but also fundamentally what it means. And I guess showing up is a key part, Anne. I mean, I don't know if you ever have the expectations. Well, you're the London Business School. Surely you just have on-campus recruiting and we'll all go to the fair, meet the recruiters, hand over resumes and boom, boom, boom. The work that you put in and working with you and your team is no doubt reflected in the sort of quality outcomes that are then generated, right? You're not placing people, but you're accompanying people to really find their path.
Yeah, and I think that's important for anyone to understand. It doesn't matter which business school you go to. If you go to a business school, it doesn't even matter which program. It's really important to know it is no longer the model of the past decades. That has gone. Programmatic hiring is still there, but it's not the majority. The vast majority is what we call just-in-time hire or experienced hire. So that really needs to change your time horizon. That needs to change the kind of job search skills. That also needs to change the amount of efforts. I often hear students talk about dividing their activities into academic, community, and career. So career is actually a work stream in and of itself for most of our students, I would say.
I think,
those
sorry,
three
can I
streams,
just add,
Sadia,
can I just add one thing? I'd like to say to the students who are listening, and what is really, really important is now to have agency. You have to have your own drive. It isn't a matter of showing up at one business school and yes, you're going to be able to you really have to work with us and work alongside us and get the support and can communicate with us. And, there's a lot of resilience needed as well. So yeah, there will be knockbacks as well.
Yeah, and in on that, and those three streams perhaps of activity, prioritizing Sadia is presumably something that's very important because there's a recruiting event with a consulting firm over here, and then on Tuesday night there's they must have to really think carefully about the allocation of their time.
Completely, and I'm sure other business schools think the same way. We are really aware of the fact that our students, it's a different generation of people. And the other thing is they're very time short. Certainly in our MBA, they are time short. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of activities going on in Cambridge as well, and they want to be part of the whole environment. And yes, and we have a lot of entrepreneurship stuff going on in colleges as well. So it's an exciting place, but time is limited. So we are really aware of it. We try and make sure that the most relevant things are there for them on the right times, but we try not to overwhelm them as well. And I think that's a critical thing for my team to make sure that the students are not overwhelmed, because that can be detrimental.
Yeah, building relationships, whether it's with classmates or with potential employers, takes that time and dedication. When you think both on your doorstep in London, countless opportunities, but you have graduates that are exploring opportunities in Mumbai and Dubai and Boston and all over the world. How do you encourage them to build that deeper relationship with an employer?
That's a really good point. So we do get global employers who recruit globally, obviously, but the moment you go to firms that are more of a mid-size, it has to be much more self-directed. So I would say this is a really key point of knowing ahead of time where you want to be geographically based and what your different options are, both from a visa perspective, but also just to what you're speaking about, being on the ground. Relationship building does take time, and it does take some level of presence. Yes, you can go on a Zoom call, but how much better if you can go and have your cup of tea with them and have that chat and bonding. So one way that it works is we have a campus in Dubai. We've just opened an office in Riyadh. Some of our students go and take a block week elective in Dubai as a way of networking with other students who are more based in the Middle East region. We have treks going to the US, often student-led. So it's quite nice when you can network and you don't put yourself first, but you can say, actually, I'm here to recruit you as a speaker for one of our LBS events. So that tends to be an easier in for many of our students practicing networking.
Right. Even in the one-year program, Sadia, and the intensity that brings, this triple jump for certain candidates where they are changing geography and sector and function, which is a lot in one go. Do you have sort of a, I don't know, naive to describe a decision-making tree, but sort of saying, well, what are the non-negotiables,
Yeah,
either
absolutely.
industry or where you would work,
Absolutely.
and work from there?
Absolutely. And I've noticed that actually looking at the way the pathways are working out these days, more recently, that the triple jumps are getting harder. So we when I start talking to students, my team does as well, we always start asking them to start coming to us with what are the non-negotiables, which is the areas where they want to grow, change, etc., but which ones they really, really want. And that is the best point to start at. And then we want them to build out and develop. And then it could be that we are looking at something completely different. But then later on, there is another thing that's actually happening that I think is important to mention right now, that the countries are becoming, how should I say, the flow between countries is getting harder. I mean, Brexit did it for us as well in the beginning. We've got an immigration issue happening at the moment as well, and of course, US as well. So we have to make our students aware what are the issues facing them in certain regions in order to if they want to make them jump, and so be realistic. But yes, I mean, if you're working with very large global companies, of course, visas are all sorted for US as well. So, those shouldn't be a problem.
Right, so continued shifting landscape. You did say no one day looks like another for either of you over the last few years. And just to go back to what you were talking about, student-led treks to the US and bringing in guest speakers, there are a lot of experiential learning opportunities in the program, projects and internships, consulting labs, global experiences that presumably can directly impact some of those career outcomes.
Absolutely. I would say that's one of the differences people need to think about in the 2-year program experience versus a 1-year. Because in the 2-year, yes, the first year has that pace where, it's harder to fit things in, you're time poor and really need to think about how to allocate your focus. The second year in our MBA has a lot more flexibility built in. So that's really good if somebody's looking to make a switch or make a switch on several dimensions, because they can sample some of the experiences. So getting a London experience on their CV during term time is something that about a third of our students do by now. So they can work up to 20 hours a week. And while that doesn't sound much, if it's during term time, they have real deliverables. And just to give you an example, we've got quite a few students working with AI startups, AI scale-ups, and we know that experience then becomes interesting to an employer when they recruit for full time.
How does that translate, Sadia, of Judge within the wider university and startups and scale-ups that are happening in every corner of the city?
But before I answer that, can I just sort of say that at the business school, I know we have a 1-year program and it's quite tight and busy, but we do have an amazing set. I don't know if you can ask about this later, but experiential program. Our program is very experiential. So we would start off in the beginning, and this ties into your question as well. In the beginning, we have a Cambridge Venture project, which actually works directly with companies within the Cambridge and London area, startups, working and solving their problems. So this is like a exposure with companies and exposure with startups project, and that takes place in the first term. In the second term, our students don't get much of a holiday, I have to admit, but in Easter, they work for 4 weeks. Everybody has to, on something called the Global Consulting Project. And these are with global companies and a strategic project. And these are all team. This is where we see all the big brands coming in to work with us, etc., and real solid deliverables happening. So yes, we have a 1-year program, and then again, they can do an internship or a summer project. And there are many touch points, of course, with companies throughout the year and the competitions that students take part in. I'm always amazed at how much energy they have and how they get involved, and how many conferences they've got on. I mean, my team and I are pulling our hair out, really, because there are so many conferences they're all excited about and to do here in the next 6 weeks. But so there's a lot of vibrancy, and of course, ecosystem, Cambridge startup system is amazing. We've got something called the King's Lab, and actually I got an email the other day from it and sort of said in the next 5 days, we've got 5 big events. And even I wanted to go. I have this FOMO feeling, and I want to be there for everything. And there's so much going on, and yeah, it's
It's sort of Olympian. I don't know if emerging from that not just the energy, the agility, the resilience, the priority, decision making, and everything else. I mean, Anne, as you step back and think about, future leaders, future managers, perhaps someone that's been an engineer hasn't necessarily managed teams, the sort of skills that are going to serve them well. Someone had said yesterday at Centre Court, some of the technical skills will become a commodity, but there will be other, and I don't know if you describe them as soft skills or interpersonal skills that will serve you through the rest of your career.
I fully believe in that. Often when our students are on campus, that's just like, oh yeah, it's an OB course I need to tick off. But what we then hear from alumni a few years out, and they say, now it all clicks. Now I can see this is actually the most important part of my day. That makes the difference for my team, makes a difference for my organization. So we hear it back. It sometimes takes a little while for people to realize it, to be quite honest, because sometimes it's easier to focus on the technical, right? It's more concrete. I think the cultural aspect, and this is, same at Cambridge Judge or at LBS, we're hugely, hugely diverse business schools. The majority, 90% of our cohort is international. So just being in the classroom, having those debates, being in study groups together, just challenges your thinking in a completely different way from being in another setting or from my own business school experience many, many years ago. So I think that cultural diversity is also something that people need to take forward as leaders. They might be working with distributed teams, online, hybrid, in very different cultures and contexts. So I think that's a hugely, hugely important skill.
Okay,
Communication.
I'm sorry, no, please go on.
No, and I think that's where it comes down to the communication. How do you communicate with such big differences? And I think that's where it's like a huge sort of experimental playground when you're at business school to try out, how do I lead in these different contexts?
Right. So here's an opportunity for us. If you say that, well, there's an OB course, I'll tick that box. And then they realize as they're going through the program or in the years beyond graduation, just how valuable that's proving to be. So Sadia, given that our viewers aren't even on campus yet, they're thinking about applying to business school, what would you want to share with them, across communication skills, multicultural sensitivity, working in teams that you think will become an anchor that's going to really help them through the next steps of their personal and professional development?
So I'm going to go back to my initial years at the business school. When I joined, I was head of projects, which is experiential projects. And we have these, you call them OB, we call them management practices, just to be different. And then the Cambridge Venture Project used to sit within it. And you'd have these very grown up, very experienced people sitting in my office sometimes, completely in tears sometimes, because they had not, everybody thinks they can manage teams, everybody thinks that they're really good with people, but actually when you put to the test, it can be really testing, it can be really hard. And I've had to face students who have been sort of said, but why doesn't this person from this nationality speak up? Or why doesn't so-and-so, why is this person with less experience in challenging me all the time? What, these sort of issues come through in all these OB courses and all this management practice and in the projects that we teach. So there isn't one anchor, but there are so many different elements, and it really is another mixing pot where people are just learning from each other. They're constantly learning from each other. They take away so much value. And we ask them to also assess each other in these projects. And I think from my perspective, I think that's the greatest learning that they get when they leave these projects, is because they actually understand what somebody, a group, thinks about them from the point of view of respect, contribution, etc. And I think those sort of the feedback, and as Anne said, like a playground, it is about learning directly and ability to make mistakes in this environment where you can't outside necessarily. So it's all of this, and there isn't just one thing that you can take away, but really it's a blend of things.
Yeah, that blend, as we think about the future of work, how fast AI and technology is moving, is it that whether with individuals and the ability to read the room, or how AI will, drive change in organizations, and fundamentally AI fluency? Is it just this ability to assess a situation and make informed or decisions with the information that you have?
So I'll just have a start at it.
But both of you,
I'm just going to say, if anybody is going to do it right, I think MBA students are the best product in a way, to be able to, best kind of people who can work within this technology, fast-paced, moving environment that we're going to be in, because they know how to make the best out of resources. And essentially that is what AI is going to be. They're the bridge between, as I mentioned, commerciality and technology, and they take and they learn and they translate and they commercialize elements. And again, this working with environments that where they can solve complex problems, etc. So I think still that they're the best place in this environment, a fast changing environment. And add to it, it's not just AI that's changing. There's a lot of political turmoil around. We need students to have the agility as well, to be able and to be coachable as well, to be able to change, etc. And that's, I think, something that the MBAs would really, really be able to the best to offer companies.
Right. And presumably that
answer your question.
Well, I think this sort of fluency, and also, of course, there's a lot of understandable focus on the first positions that an MBA might get coming out of school, but you're looking much longer term. You're managing their careers over 5, 15, 25 plus years. So Anne, perhaps also skills that will enable them to navigate rapid change, in a work environment and in their own careers.
I think if I was to choose one, it would be agility. I mean, look, we're talking about AI fluency now. Who knows what we'll be talking about in 2 years? The rate of change is so fast. So it's not really about what students are learning in terms of content only at business school, but learning how to learn, learning how to very quickly adapt to a changing landscape. And I think that's where, to Sadia's point, the MBAs are well positioned. Because yes, a lot of people can learn how to deal with AI, but I think then having that overlay of the business frameworks, plus on top of it, the space to actually try it out. We've had a lot of excitement on campus with some of our AI competitions, that have resulted in some ideas that are being actually taken forward and looked at both in terms of LBS as an organization in some of the clubs. So I think then having that ability to straight away hands-on try it out, I think is really, really important. And I think that's when I then listen to the alumni, that is what pays off. So just on that point, I want to make that really clearly. Sometimes students think the coming in, I've made it into business school, there's this talk about ROI, and they would like to see an immediate return. And there's so much focus on, we all like the success story of here's what I did before, ta-da, here's the success straight away after. And the truth is often it's actually the consistent steps towards a goal over time that are actually a lot more successful in terms of getting people to their destination rather than the sort of one-time big jump. So speaking to some of our alumni, they say, yes, I could have gotten the job I got out of business school probably without an MBA, but I couldn't have had the same trajectory after that for the next 5 to 10 years if I hadn't had an MBA, because I wouldn't have worked my way around the organization. I wouldn't have picked things up as quickly. I wouldn't have had the same impact in my work.
I wouldn't have, also the confidence. I mean, you wouldn't have had the confidence, really. I think the MBA gives people the confidence, the knowledge as well to take things forward and to develop things on their own. So yeah, absolutely agree with you.
Well, both of your schools do very well in Financial Times rankings and others. The FT will consult alumni that are 3 years out. Without holding you to it, if what would be a great time frame? 10 years out, 15 years out? It's different for each individual, but I mean, and just from what you're describing, and Sadia, some of those intangibles, how do you put a measure on confidence? And yet it's been so instrumental to the next steps. Should we be, not scrapping the FT, but having people really think about those longer term returns?
I would like more emphasis to be actually, I think there's a lot more value to be gained with understanding how I'm not sure about the time frame. You could take it 5 years, 3 years, etc. But the journey is important to me. I mean, it's not the remuneration. Unfortunately, the FD is heavily weighted towards higher salaries, but it's also the entrepreneurship, the value that people generate in 5, 6 years. I mean, that doesn't get counted, I think, into the FT as much as it should be. And I think it is the value of contribution. And we have students who join us from very big salaries, maybe from the US, coming in and who suddenly want to change direction and they want to be something completely different, either entrepreneurship or they want to be a venture cap. They're never going to earn that kind of pre-MBA salary immediately. So, but for them, it's been a really great shift. And the MBA has been extremely valuable. So just measuring it on the basis of salary, I think, is a little bit tricky. I think you're missing a big chunk, which is why other questions that the FD asks is, did you, aims achieved? Those are much more important, I think.
Yeah, no, it's great that we're able to capture these views.
Yeah, aims achieved is the number for me. I lead a team of career coaches in a large career center. The one thing we all agree on is ultimately, does the student come to LBS and then achieve their aims? I think 3 years is quite a good initial time frame. I think immediately post-graduation is not that meaningful. 3 years is a really good marker, I would say. So we're really proud of that, that it's sort of 89, 90% of the respondents to the FT ranking survey say, yes, through LBS, I've achieved my aims. That doesn't even get counted in the rankings. So, but it's really important to us because that matters just ethically for our profession.
And both of you are sort of alluding to sense of purpose, fulfillment, and aims achieved probably gets the closest to those elements.
Absolutely. I also feel I don't mention the generation element to you, and I'd like to expand on that. I feel, having been in a business school working with students so closely, I've seen and we're talking different generations, and this generation is much more about giving back, or they want to have that impact. So it is, whatever they choose, they want to sort of see, okay, is there a salary? Will I have a growth path? Will I be growing on my own, or can I be working in an organization which fits my values? Now, I think certainly when I was young, I didn't think that way. So I just commend this generation a lot for being that way and different. And yes, so you need to take everything into account.
Mm.
It's not just the salaries that make it happen.
Well, with your colleagues, and as we're getting close to
Mm.
wrapping up, both schools produce very detailed employment reports and for candidates. Any advice on how to read the employment report? Because of course they might get caught up on a particular company name that's in there, and yet they're hiring for positions that are, in a very different scope than this candidate is thinking. But how would you encourage someone to look through an employment report to have meaning for them?
It's a really good question. I'm going to say two things that will sound slightly contradictory, but bear with me, they make sense. The first is I often am surprised by the number of students who start and in orientation week don't seem to recall having read the employment report in any detail. So read it, it's there for a reason. And here comes the slightly contradictory bit, hold that information lightly. It's
Okay.
only one set of data points. Take it as that. Supplement it with talking to alumni. Hear it from the
Yeah.
horse's mouth, the people who've been there. Get the stories behind the numbers. And then also look at not just the rankings, not the headline number,
Mm.
but look beyond it. And I think it's to your point, Matt, yes, an employment report, what does it tell you if X% of the class did something? That's not your probability of doing that
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
It's not, it doesn't add up. So really look that level deeper, look at the sector level, look at the geography level, because it's only then really that the data is meaningful.
Mm.
Careers are individual. So an aggregate set of numbers will only take you so far.
Right. Right.
Yes.
Sadia, what
One
would you add to that?
one other thing I'd like to mention is that things especially in the last 3, 4 years, the economic environment has been tricky, and jobs in certain sectors have been slower than in certain other sectors. So students shouldn't be backward looking as well.
Mm.
They should be looking forward. What are they? And they should be reading, and they should be understanding where things are moving towards, right? And I'm much more positive about the global environment, well, not the global, not the politics, but the job situations now onwards. I think for the last 3 years, it's been a bit of a tricky market, but I'm much more positive, but I want students to come in with agency, understanding what they're good at, what they want to be achieving, come and speak. Engagement with the careers team is always vital. We've had years of experience of speaking to students, and we are very good at doing the diagnosing. We are
Mm.
very good at sort of pointing people to, go and speak to so and so. This person had that kind of issue. We can get you to connect with them. So that element is really important, but being a realist is very important. I mean, that I would say is critical. Be realistic about where you want to go. And everybody talks a lot about squiggly careers these days. There's a big, nice, theory going on about them. I do think there are ways of getting to the goal that you want to be, but not necessarily in a straight line, but by taking smaller steps towards the right direction.
Mm.
And
Now,
hopefully,
squiggly or linear, one final question for both of you, and you can keep your answers as short or as long as you like. As you think about the future of work, all of the uncertainty and geopolitics and everything else that surrounds us, AI and the rest, better to face that career with an MBA than without?
oh yes.
I like that. That's a very nice, short, to the point answer. Anne?
I'm going to give that business school answer of it depends. I don't think an MBA is right for everyone.
Mm.
And I think that's exactly the homework anybody in this call would want to do in order to make a good decision and really make good judgment here as to is it the right time now for you to do this in your life, in your career? And why does it make sense? It kind of comes back to that question I asked at the beginning. You need to have a strong why. If you don't
Mm.
have that, then reconsider what else will get you where you want to be, or maybe you need a bit more reflection time to actually think, why is it that you're looking at an MBA? What is it truly about that you're working towards?
Yeah, and that self-reflection is something that we aspire to at Centre Court, and it's conversations like this with both of you, whether our careers are squiggly, linear, and whatever shape they will take. I think that you've really encouraged our audience from all over the world to put in that reflection. Really think about their next steps, and with that extraordinary positive perspective, from the experiences that you've had, seeing so many positive outcomes from your students. Wow, I feel blessed that we've been able to capture all of that in the last 50 minutes. So, Sadia and Anne, thank you for joining us at Centre Court for such. We promised to think out loud, and I think you took that to a new dimension. So, thank you, both of you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very much.
you.
Lovely to be here.